Hi, it is Wednesday at noon, and Pacific, and this is Janet Fitch, so that means it's Writing Wednesday, um, where I generally will talk about craft issues, writing issues, psychological issues, and today, the aftermath of the election. It is probably going to be about psychological issues because that comes first. Um, the disappointment, the shock, the um, disappointment is just such a small word. Um, Discouragement, tragedy, epic tragedy, fury, rage, um, bitter, distrust. Um, there are so many different feelings in there. I'm not going to talk about politics so much as I'm going to talk about kind of how this kind of huge, it's a huge swerve that we only we got the first half 4 years ago, or ended 4 years ago, 8 years ago. We got the first half, now we're getting the second half, and it's going to be even worse because there are no adults in the room left. There is no necessary reelection. There is no possibility of not getting the Supreme Court seats. Now he's got them. He's got judges. It's all going to happen. So, if my first reaction has been on a literary level, because that's what we're here for, is you're here for not to hear me complain about my utter devastation, but about how it affects the writing life. So I'm really going to try to go there with a bit of, how can I not mourn? Yep. Hi, Bozena. So Bozena says a very sad day for us in Europe, too. Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's going to be dealing with this. Yeah. Hi, Gail. Good to see you. Nice to be here with you. I figured silence is the worst thing. Silence is the worst thing. So I thought I would come on here at least and share some thoughts. One thing about big, hi Llewellyn, oh, Canada too, he says, yeah. And one thing that, when you think about the responsivity of different literary art forms to big historical events, like the one we're experiencing right now and we're going to be experiencing after the 20th of January, which is Inauguration Day, a day I never thought I would see, a return of this collapsing figure, just the worst person in the world, and how the worst person in the world beat, a completely qualified person, because they have propaganda like you wouldn't believe, and their followers are in silos, and many Democrats did not vote because I heard some girl at the pool yesterday saying, "Oh, I don't love either candidate 100%, so I'm staying home." Like a toddler who doesn't like his lunch, and throws it on the ground. Not realizing that there isn't going to be another lunch. There isn't going to be another lunch. This is it. But we're not talking politics, we're talking literature, we're talking creativity, we're talking the development of some sort of art form, of how this kind of event becomes it becomes points of change in an art form. And I've been thinking a lot recently about the surrealists. Now, surrealism became a movement in the 30s because everything was so, turned on its head. Surrealism is what stops and says how absurd, how weird and dreamlike our world is and our lives are. And it's not surprising that I would be thinking about surrealism. I went and saw a film called Gloria's Call, if you want to look it up, gloriascall.org, about an art history graduate student who rediscovered female surrealists, especially the Latin American female surrealists. And it seems like a time for surrealism. It is Leanne Krantz says, does a book about unions, climate, farm workers have a chance of publication now? I think so. I think definitely people would be interested in that. And Llewellyn says, there is a good article in the New York Times today on why it's seeing one's nation in the mirror. Yeah. I keep thinking of surrealism. So this, it's kind of a disconnect in a way from the outer world and the clamor of all that, and using this kind of sensitivity that we have right now to speak through a lens, or speak through a some sort of a hearing mechanism that can pick up these undercurrents of there's what's going on and there's what's really going on. And I don't want to, talk about the deep state or the conspiracy theories and all that kind of stuff, but more, in surrealism, you are speaking in a symbolic language. And sometimes it is easier when you have these big complex feelings to embody them in symbols, images, dreams, absurdity. In fiction, this is where there is surreal fiction, there is science fiction, where you embody, even horror, you embody what is these strange currents, and leave them as strange, not try to put it into a kitchen table conversation, but you can go and symbolize what's going on. Brave New World, 1984, I, Wendy, is not trying to encompass or tell you what's going on in the current world, but it is embodying it in a form that you can see it more clearly than in realist fiction. And maybe we're in for a period of science fiction, surreal fiction, and I think also, generally experimental fiction, like how do you how do you share the feelings of a time like this, not just the events? Certainly, eventually historical fiction will be part of this world, this equation of literary depiction of these times. But this close to the events, and we're going to be experiencing them for the next 4 years. One can take any part of an historical moment and write about, like, that one person and how they're affected. You can write from any point of view. You can write from a perpetrator's point of view. You can write from, but using a surreal or science fiction, using some kind of lens through which to describe without trying to encompass the present moment, where you're speaking in, it's a poetic form. You're speaking in a code. Everybody knows what you're talking about, but you don't have to say, who stayed home from the election station and who voted and why different people did what they did. Surrealism is perfect for our moment. One of the things I reached for last night, when I turned off the television, was Dylan, Bob Dylan. If that's not surrealism, early Dylan, I don't know what is. But there is a strain in American culture that will not be unfamiliar to you, of the circus, the carny, the snake oil. America has a real taste for the spectacle, the carny, the con man. We just love that. The tent preacher, the person, the snake handler, and all that. That's a very big American streak. And I think Dylan's music certainly, he knows that streak of America. He comes from the upper Midwest, a small town. And a lot of this is craving for spectacle. And to put the body politic in danger because you want a spectacle it's very American. Sadly, it's the other half, and we don't like to think about that aspect of ourselves. But you'll see it in literature if you start looking for it, if you start looking in especially short stories, but also in longer fiction. The fiction of the con man. It's a very Pynchon kind of world. The con man, the snake oil salesman. I mean, look at even The Wizard of Oz starts with a snake oil salesman, although he's a kindly old guy. But it's very intrinsic to the American taste, the American soul. And I think it's a good time to write about circus, to write about illusion, to write about the craving for spectacle, and the dark underside of that. It's very big. It's very big. It's the glee of the lynch mob. They're selling postcards of the hanging. They're painting the passports brown. The beauty shop is full of sailors. The circus is in town. That's a Dylan song, Desolation Row. Look at Highway 61, Dylan had his hand on the pulse of a lot of this stuff. Now he's mellowed out a lot, but if you listen to those early albums, or he has songs that are certainly topical. This is the story of Hurricane. The injustice sometimes is dealt with directly, but he does have such a sense of the love of the carnival. Mary Rose says, our ugliness writ bold. Yeah. Wendy says, grifters. Yeah, we're very interested. We're susceptible because we want the show. There's a wonderful painting that I had many years ago. It's probably 2 years ago. Years ago, I found a painting. It's a Renaissance painting. Maybe I saw it in a museum and then looked it up, where there's a crowd around a mountebank who is doing like the 3-card Monte kind of thing, and the crowd that's assembled to watch. And there's this guy, one of the guys in the crowd is like staring at the mountebank as his pockets are being picked. And this is such a picture of what's going on here, that the artist is able to say without saying. And it's also the reason that so I'm thinking, it's a good time to maybe do a little bit of science fiction or a little bit of surrealism, kind of dream-based writing. When I think about surreal authors, I think of Anna Kavan. If you've never read her, it's a dreamscape that's related to science fiction. It's related to horror. And she's somebody you might look at. Julie and the Bazooka and Ice. It's a time for surrealism. And surrealism in literature you can look at even somebody like Italo Calvino or definitely Borges. It feels very de Chirico, Mary Rose said. Yeah, exactly. That's good. And Llewellyn says Woody Allen's theme too in many films, Carnival, Ferris wheel, etc. Yeah. And that would be, I think that's going to be a rich landscape for us. It's usually depicted as a good thing, as a pleasure. But the dark side of it is more like Carney. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Carney. Marjo is about a tent preacher, a boy, charismatic preacher. And the dark side becomes really evident. And look at Jonestown. I mean, that's where it goes, and literature's failed, I think, many times. That we've stayed on the surface and admired the fun of it, rather than really thinking through what is this kind of taste for, and it's, it is why, there's Sutling Postcards of the Hanging. There's that really dark side of the spectacle, the love of spectacle. Mary Rose says even Wes Anderson, though subtly dark. Yeah, I wonder who else really goes into that. Faulkner does. I haven't, it doesn't spring to mind, but I bet Didion has that, at least in the White Album. I bet Joyce Carol Oates has a Circus in there somewhere. And if she doesn't, she should. And then Pynchon, he often doesn't hit the darkness enough, but he definitely has our taste for the carnival, for the circus, the spectacle. Highway 61, I mean, that's definitely a Pynchon thing. And Dennis Johnson, I think that he would handle this admirably, were he still alive, which is such a tragedy. Styron, Mary Rose says Styron in Sophie's Choice talks about this. That joy of, somebody wrote to me recently and called it the excitement of evil. That it's like people know that they're doing the wrong thing, and they're like kids who are getting away with something, and it's like at any second a grown-up is going to intervene and they're going to be in trouble. But for the time being, it is so exciting. And I feel like the country is like that. It's like, ooh, we're going to do really bad shit and nobody's going to stop us. I mean, look at January 6th. That if that wasn't a circus, that I don't even know what that would be. We've looked upon that kind of thing as fun, the merry prankster, the yippee thing, have fun in street theater and stuff. But there is a dark streak there as well. And it's very American. It's been there since the beginning. Looters. You mean looters in general, or is there a work of art that's called Looters? Mary Rose. I'm trying to think of who deals with the dark carnival. I mean, the German expressionists, definitely the Germans between the wars, were very aware of this. January 6th, the sprung gargoyles. Yeah. Oh, meaning looting, just the idea of stealing. Yeah, I think there's looters who really want that size 9 sneaker. And then there are people who are just the glee of being able to bash stuff up and set stuff on fire, and there's an excitement that takes over. It's so American, when people are some people are angry about something, and then other people just want to burn shit. Ensor, yeah, there you go. So there's surrealism. James Ensor, who was Belgian, I want to say. And very symbolic. He was also a symbolist. So, death riding through Brussels, and all the carnival-esque elements are certainly there. The Confederacy of Dunces, Wendy said. Putting your thumb on the scale, Mary Rose said. Moulin Rouge, Toulouse-Lautrec. Yeah. Miranda says, a frenzy of wanting to watch the world burn. It's very deep in the perversity of human nature, and we're seeing we don't want to think that way. We're trying to, walk in the light. We're trying to be like the Enlightenment, started this country, and this sense of human dignity and the sense of forward motion, belief in science, and I think we're seeing the end of that. But in any case, there's always been a streak of this counter trend of the carnival. This, I guess, in psychology, if anybody is a therapist here, the psychology, you would call this the death instinct. Freud would call this the death instinct, that there's the eros, life instinct, reproduction, libido, all that stuff. And then there's the death instinct that wants to see the end of the world. They want to see it just, they want to bring it about. And it's touched our religion, our more extreme Christian sects that have a strong apocalyptic view are very, very popular with people who they feel powerless, they feel overlooked, and there's no glamour in their lives. So they go for spectacle in their religion. And there's a very narrow line between these kind of apocalyptic religions and what's going on politically. They're feeding each other right now. So how do you write about that? That's a very Flannery O'Connor. Flannery O'Connor would be all over that. So here are some other people to read and take a look at. Who else can we think of? in literature who has explored this area of the dark human nature. I see it a bit but the spectacle as part of that. I mean, there's a lot of dark writers, but this everything that rises must converge. So Flannery O'Connor. But it's this longing to bring about death, to be part of that. It's the day of the locust. It is the day of the locust. And the people gather around the dying to watch them die. Oh. I mean, it's the part of ourselves that, looks at the accident on the freeway. Mary Rose says, is it a rescue fantasy? I don't think so. I don't think they want people to be rescued. A face in the crowd, Gail says. Yeah, the face in the crowd. That's a film, right? And it's a slightly horror thing. Wanting to have a hand on the wheel of the car crash. Yeah, that's it. So The Face in the Crowd is a 1957 film. A female radio reporter turns folk singing drifter into a powerful media star who becomes detestable during his meteoric rise. Well, that's a classic. That's a classic, and he goes completely off the rails. But every Tennessee Williams play has a sense of this, especially I'm thinking of Streetcar, that there is the desire for a more dramatic life. And it is a bit surreal. And I think one of the reasons people like horror is they want to kind of air that part of themselves out. But in this case, they think that, I don't know, that they're going to survive it and nobody else is, not seeing that, we're all part of the no man is an island, They think that, those are the bad people. Those are the people we don't like. Those are the people that you can beat up and, hang, and we don't need those people. And then, lo and behold, it's their turn. Oh, no, I didn't mean it to be me. Orson Welles has a strong streak of that. Llewellyn says, touch of evil, third man, lady from Shanghai. Yeah, that this is always with us. It's always a part of it. And there's usually some sinister backstory, like the third man, which I shouldn't, if anybody hasn't seen it, I don't want to give away the plot of the third man, but there's a mysterious person who is doing something really bad. And it has that kind of, it's based on a German novel, as I recall. And it has a very carnivalesque soundtrack on it. Let's see about the third man. Is that a Graham Greene? The Third Man is a British film noir. Yeah, it's a Graham Greene story set in occupied Vienna. And, German Expressionism has a lot to do with this as well. This is both a visual, it was a movement embodied in visual art, in literature, and in film, German Expressionism. And it is between the wars, and it has this garish fascination with kind of a lurid society where there's lots of stuff going on in the shadows. People like Kirchner and Gross, Grosz, and who else was German Expressionism? It's really the dichotomy of the kind of bloated upper class in confrontation with a starving working class, and the injustice just goes on, and eventually that society completely broke down. Yeah. Because we prize intellectualization overall. I don't know that we do. I mean, I know I do, but there's an anti-intellectual strain in American life that we've seen in politics, not only now, but it arises again and again. There was a party called the Know Nothing Party. Andrew Jackson was kind of a know-nothing and a populist and very Trumpy. If you read, there's an early Eugene O'Neill play called A Touch of the Poet, and it's about the struggle of a family who is doing very poorly, and they support the anti-Jackson, the opposite of the know-nothings. A Touch of the Poet. O'Neill, okay. It was completed in 1942. Duh. Look at that date. This is the beginning of our involvement in World War II. And it is, they don't even talk about what it's about, only what its reception was. That's bogus. So anyway, it's about the political tensions between a, serious political party with moral background and this sort of know-nothing, braggart culture represented by the Andrew Jackson types, and somebody wanting to give up their moral foundation to get ahead and do the Jacksonian, Trumpian. Boy, that it's not his best. It's not O'Neill's best play, but it speaks very strongly to our moment, and we're definitely worth reading. I wonder if they've ever made it into a movie. Probably not. And Cabaret, well, there's a classic set in the rise of the Nazi Party in Germany, and that prizing entertainment, prizing entertainment over the seriousness of life. Life is cheap, and you can make a spectacle out of beating people up or torturing animals or stomping somebody to death on the sidewalk, and that's a spectacle. Oh, let's go look at that. Oh, okay. It's the lack of empathy, complete lack of empathy of watching somebody being harmed and not imagining yourself in that situation. So, Mary Rose is saying when intellectualization forgets to get a bigger table. Yeah, I think that that's one of the, that's definitely the Achilles heel of enlightenment, as embodied in our founding fathers, that they couldn't see their own weakness. But on the other hand, it's a beautiful it's a beautiful idea, the Enlightenment, and people they don't really have to read that stuff anymore. They don't read Rousseau, they don't read Voltaire, they don't read, American education has really, really slipped from, the way an average person's high school education was, say, when my dad was growing up. The average person's high school education was better than a college education is now at most schools, that they don't insist on any kind of understanding of the intellectual grounding of what made this country. So now we're paying the price. That's why they like private schools. That's why they like all these Christians. I'm not saying I have anything against Christians, but the schools that are just teaching the Bible. They don't get history, they don't get philosophy, they don't get civics, they don't get literature. They don't want them to be reading like works that are sort of disturbing and make you stop and think, oh my God, is that what we do? The bluest eye, let's ban it because it upsets the children. Well, it upsets the children. These are the same freaking children who didn't vote in this election because nobody was perfect. Education, the lack of a good public education in this country is really a lot of what's hurting us. But this taste, I'm more interested at the moment in really this deep, deep psychological rent in our culture that loves the spectacle and loves the con man and loves Mr. Tambourine Man, A Clockwork Orange. Llewellyn says, Mary Rose says, my husband's country Indiana great-grandparents were reading Shakespeare. Yeah, they were reading Shakespeare. They don't read that anymore. It's like too hard. I don't want to be depressing, but it was said that that college professors are having a hard time with their students because they'd never been assigned to read a whole book. They never had to read a book in school, only excerpts of a book. So what happens with that is that people, one, they lose the power of concentration, of focus, to be able to sit and read an entire book. They lose the ability to digest a large, complex work and have to digest it on their own, as opposed to just being fed sound bites that they can swallow, or 10 things you can do to have nicer feet or whatever, the ability to internalize big, complex ideas and interrelations is being lost. The ability to empathize, when you get pieces of a book, it's not the same because you don't develop the same empathy for the characters. And evidently the reading of fiction and the development of empathy are very closely intertwined. Let's see what people are saying. We're getting a lot of stuff here. Mary, let's see, there was something came in here. Yeah, Miranda says, I'm shocked at the education in the States, especially the lack of geography. Yeah, for me, it's history. It drives me crazy. Mary Rose says, Whitman, I have the books. Well, Whitman is life. That is Eros. Life is a soundbite, yeah. Say that again about fiction and empathy. They show there's a very close correlation between reading fiction and empathy, because you develop a connection to the characters. Let's let's see, what did I do? I think I turned the I turned the camera around somehow. Let's get it to turn around again. There we go. You get to see I lean my phone up against a coil of rope. That's my studio. But somebody else said something that I really related to. It went by very fast. Yeah, so there's, fiction is a healing thing, but I really recommend us to explore a little bit more the surrealism, the way of couching, encoding what you want to say a little bit and letting it be let the feeling come through. As the reader starts to understand the tie between what's going on in your story and what's going on in the world. So Bozena says, have to recommend Tadeusz Rosewitz here and his plays, The Card Index, and so forth. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, I've not heard of him. Tadeusz, Tadeusz, Polish, Rosewitz, Rozewicz. That's definitely worth reading. I'm trying to think of who else does the carnival. But it's deeply in Borges, the surrealism of that. And to some degree, I want to say Cortázar in Hopscotch. But there's something about the circus that is specifically American, and the kind of lurid willingness to give up morality for a morally questionable show. It's like a freak show. Llewellyn said that, right? Back here. Like a freak show. Yeah. We love that. And it's sort of transgressive, the people know it's a Walpurgis night, it's people, which is Goethe, Faust. Check that out. It's Bosch. Somebody brought that up. It's Hieronymus Bosch is what we're seeing now. And that's surrealism too, but it's medieval, which was a very surreal time. Günter Grass, Bozena was saying, yeah. Tin Drum. So I think generally when big events happen like this, the poets are the quickest to do something about it, to write a poem. I wrote a poem this morning. I wrote a poem yesterday. I wrote a poem this morning. I'm in a group, if anybody's interested in it. It's a meditation and free write poetry group that is available Monday through Friday. She started it during COVID, I think. Oh, she started it as we were waiting for the results to be approved for Biden's certification. And it just went on and on and on, and the anxiety was insane. So she started this group, Peggy Dobrier. So if you're interested, it's 8:30 to 9:15, Monday through Friday Pacific time. So if you're back east, then it's later. It's 11:30 or 11 o'clock, 11:30 Eastern. And I've been working on a book, so I have not been doing it much, but I'm doing it again because I need it. I need to be centered. I need to be thinking about this stuff. So the poets get it first. Poets are able to transform what's going on immediately into art. Fifth Business by Robertson Davies, Llewellyn said, the Canadian, of course. Deptford trilogy. Fifth Business is a lot of magic, and that whole, the carnival is in town. The Master and Margarita by Bulgakov has the it's a bit, the circus is in town. The devil comes to Moscow in 1930. And Wendy, I'll put in her information if you want to do the morning meditation and the poetry free write. I'll write it in the comments. So first comes the poets. They can deal with stuff immediately. Then more your essayists, they'll start opining within the day or two. And then short stories might start to appear after that about some aspect of this. And then finally, the novelists, it takes a few years. Like right now, we're seeing pandemic novels are starting to be published. So that's 4 years. So novels take a while to digest, but short stories take a little less time, and poems you can respond right now. And that's what I was doing this morning, and creating symbols for what you're seeing, where you don't have to say at this time we did this and at this time, but just your feelings and something to hold them. So any other questions? I hope that if you have more thoughts about this streak of kind of a nihilistic carnival, snake oil, Jacksonian America, definitely, or writers who are addressing these subjects, definitely put them in the comments. I'm very interested. And if I think of more, I'll put them in the comments as well. So thank you very much for another Writing Wednesday. I feel a little better having, seeing some of the links. I haven't really thought this through, obviously, yet. So this is letting me do that. And I appreciate your being here. And be gentle with yourself this week. We don't want this to kill us. We want to stay strong. Stay strong. Don't go on a bender. It's not the time to go off your program, eat everything in the house. Just take time to slow down. And the rawness of the time, it opens you up to beauty. So the fact that we feel sort of skinned is a very good time to go for a walk and look at people's yards and see what they've done. Find a sometimes you see a stranger do something that just makes you fall in love with that stranger. Yesterday I saw 2 people like getting their little tiny tot ready for nursery school down the street, and just like, I love those people. Use the rawness of the time to open your heart a bit. All righty. Well, thank you, and we'll see you next week. Okay, bye.